Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. You know the score by now. All things Eagles related, the last 7 days, wrapped up and put inside Santa's sack. And that's where they're going to stay, because it is officially Christmas season. I won't be told otherwise. It's mid-November, alright? Spooky season is behind us, unless you're the Eagles and you're coming off a bye week, and somehow, some way, you come out on that bye less healthy than when you went into it. That takes some doing. We're going to get to that. This is a monumental podcast because it's one of the first ones of the year and I want to start off actually with a thank you that's totally irrelevant to all the stuff we're going to talk about today. And that's purely because last week's show was probably the most personal one that I've done in quite some time. Maybe not ever, but definitely quite some time. Whether it was the Jordan Matthews stuff or the very trademark ultimate LJ analogy, which the girl it was about listened to the show, so that was brilliant. That was a mistake I'm not going to repeat for 2 weeks now. But genuinely, like, the feedback, I wasn't expecting it to be that strong at all. And to know that I can get that personal with you guys, so that it's just full free reign of being myself. I say it a million times, it's a real blessing to be able to do that and to feel that comfortable. And I wouldn't be able to if it wasn't for you. So thank you for allowing me to do that. And it means the world that you enjoy that sort of content, because it means that the connection we've got, me and you, gentle listener, through your headphones or your AirPods or your earpods or your surround sound while you're making some sweet sensual love, whichever one it is, yeah, it means a lot. And moving on from that very swiftly, before the images start going in your head, where do we even begin today? Do we start with Ajayi? Do we start with the medical staff? Do we start with Darren Sproles? Do we start with Jordan Howard? Like, it's all around the same thing, but there are so many lenses to look at it through. It's like going into a bakery and not really deciding what you want. We'll start with the big news there, because it all kind of intertwines, right? So Jay Ajayi's back in Philadelphia, the Brit. I'm happy because English, British, you know, he's from London, I'm not. That's where the similarities end, really. But it's cool. Like, he was very productive in 2017. He was brought in for a workout on Friday and reportedly signed later that day. Now, that's brilliant. That is absolutely fine. But the reason why he signed and what we can expect from him, I don't get it. I understand the logic of bringing him back. What I don't understand, though, is the fact that a lot of people complain about the Eagles roster moves, saying that, it's too many unhealthy players, it's players with injury concerns, it's veterans that don't produce, it's veterans that get hurt, and then they get hurt, and then they bring back Jay Ajayi, and everyone's like, yes, alright, JJ, and he's coming back. What does he bring to the table, apart from 2 kneecaps that are wobbling around? He's injured as well. What? He's injured as well? He hasn't played since week 5, 2018? Alright. Okay. Good. Now, if he's healthy, brilliant. I think, it's a no-brainer that he knows the system. I do see it, though, is that it's probably a sign Jordan Howard's injury may be a little bit more substantial than we think. And you've got to view this from a coaching perspective. Like, okay, how many times in the last 3 years has Doug Peterson waltzed up to that podium and gone, he's day-to-day, he's day-to-day, making good progress, he's day-to-day, we're seeing good things, he's on the field here, good day-to-day. And then that day-to-day turns into September to January. Quite a few times, right? So day-to-day with Jordan Howard, it is a little bit worrying. And I can see that's why they probably made the Ajayi trade. I mean, like, if you'd have gone, and you're not going to sign Ajayi to replace Darren Sproles because they're 2 very different style backs, and Darren Sproles hasn't really done much this year, other than, he had 3 consecutive plays against the Bears that went absolutely nowhere. So in that regard, you're probably missing Wendell Smallwood at that point. But no, I think Ajayi genuinely would replace what you lose in Howard, or at least temporarily. And then from there, I guess kind of come in and be what LeGarrette Blount was to the Eagles in 2017. That's the only way I could see it working. Just someone to maybe take off the strain from the lead back. So when Howard does get healthy, that you do have someone, especially as you go into those cold December months and it gets a bit chilly and you need your Philly Sports Network hoodies to keep you warm, just to take that edge off and keep the guys healthy. And Chris Infante, who I'm sure is definitely listening to this podcast, because that's absolutely what he does. He hosts a Flipping the Bird show. He's one of our writers here at Philly Sports Network. He put an article out today about the Ajayi signing and did some interesting research with regards to snap counts, and I found this interesting. He said prior to Ajayi coming along, I assume that means, to the team and not out of the womb, he said the Eagles leaned on one running back 50% or more in 3 times in 8 games, and 2 running backs over 30% of snaps in 5 games. After the acquisition, the Eagles leaned on 1 running back over 50% of the time once in 5 games, with 2 running backs over 30% 2 times, and 3 running backs over 20%. So, like, it's one of those things where as soon as Ajayi came in, apart from that Week 17 game, which was basically a bye, you had a bye guarantee, didn't really need to do anything, that he was just there to take that strain off. Like, LeGarrette Blount's workload reduced, and I've said since, maybe mid-2017, that the optimal workload for an Eagles running back in this scheme is 16 carries. Like, that's always been the case with LeGarrette Blount, with Miles Sanders, Wendell Smallwood, like, whoever has been the guy. 16 carries is kind of the cap. Outside of that, it then begins to trickle. And when Ajayi came in, that was very much the case. And that's what enabled someone like Corey Clement to be so productive, because he was fresh and raring to go. And especially if Jordan Howard, who has probably taken more hits than, I don't know, probably Logan Paul in that boxing fight, although they were awful hits. Maybe we'll touch on that later if anyone watched it. That was dreadful. Good fight though, good to watch. I think that this is something that had to be made. You've got to keep those running backs fresh. If you're now down to just Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, as much as I love Boston Scott, alright, I'm a Boston Scott stan. He was my off-season draft crush. It was my draft crush, it was my crush when they signed him to begin with, like midway through last season. I've done 2 film rooms on him. Out of Louisiana Tech, absolutely loved the guy, was great in preseason, was great in training camp, and if it wasn't for Darren Sproles coming back, then he would have probably had a roster spot anyway. It had to be a bit of a longer-winded process, but hey, here we are. The interesting thing is, though, that this game was primed to be a Jordan Howard breakout day, year, whatever you want to call it, because the Patriots' run defense is average at best. Alright, their overall defense, best in the NFL. Pass defense, best in the NFL, but they rank 14th in DVOA. They surrender 4.7 yards per carry, which is 7th worst in the NFL. If there was ever a game for the Pats to stack the box, it was this one. And in a way, that's what you want, because last season, Jordan Howard was actually more productive against stat boxes, I believe. Or was the year before? That was one of the two. I'll have to dig that one out. But what the Patriots will try and do is take away the run, because outside of that, Alshon Jeffrey's limited, which means your wide receiver group is going to be Jordan Matthews, Nelson Aguilar, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and Matt Collins. It's basically 2016 again with that, isn't it? So I can see why the importance of Jordan Howard here matters, and why they maybe felt the need to go and get someone that can barrel his way through in the same vein as Howard for this game. But I do think Ajayi's role moving beyond this season is definitely one to keep an eye on. It should be one that frees up some reps for Jordan Howard, something that takes a strain off Miles Sanders, who shouldn't be expected to come in here and dominate. And I understand Sanders has grown, he's developed over the last few weeks, but he is still about as impatient as when you're lining up into a nightclub. You've been there for 3 minutes, you're like, oh my god, I need the toilet, and you start moaning all the time. Basically, Miles Sanders, when he's got the ball in his hands, like, he's done better, he's done a lot better, but there's still a long way to go. So, against this Pats defense, where they are going to stack the box and there is extra attention to take him out of it, the last thing you want to do is overload a running back that is basically just going to run into the back of his offensive lineman. He's getting better at it, at not doing that, but as of right now, it's still a legitimate concern that patience, that vision, that awareness, that mental processing isn't quite where it needs to be for him to be a solidified starting running back at this stage. So getting Jay Ajayi back, brilliant, but then you've got to wonder, alright, well, he's had a year off now. He worked out for the Lions at the start of November. They didn't bring him on. So, is he good to go? Is he going to have the same flaws? Is he going to maybe have ball security problems? When was the last time he took a hit? These are genuine things. And Doug Peterson said today that if the Eagles sign him, which they ultimately have, he's going to be getting snaps right away, which is fab, but I'm a little bit on edge about that. I'm a little bit on edge because I do think that if there's ever a defense that's going to try and punish Ajayi, almost force you to give him the ball, it's going to be the Patriots, because they will try and force you into running the ball and then taking the run away. It's what Bill Belichick's always done. And as good as Jay Ajayi was in 2017, I mean, he averaged 5.8 yards per carry during that Super Bowl winning season. He had 408 yards on 70 carries. He was an absolute beast. Eagles fans loved him. But the fact remains that his knees are about as durable. Oh, God, I was going to say the opposite of the Motor Trend Truck of the Year, which would basically just be a Volkswagen Passat, I think. It's not durable at all. It's really worrying. And when Ajayi is healthy and when he's able to go, excellent. Like, he's definitely one of the better runners in the league. The problem is he's always had those injury problems. He signed with Drew Rosenhaus at the start of last off-season, who was so excellent with the Antonio Brown stuff. What a guy. And then, obviously, in his contract year, within a few weeks, was sidelined with a torn ACL. Like, you hate to see it. And you've got to feel like that it's not looking too good. Like, even Darren Sproles came back for one last rodeo after yet another injury-plagued season. That didn't end too well. So, I really hope this move... I mean, it makes sense, right? That if Jordan Howard's injury is a bit more substantial, you want someone to come in to maybe be a bit more explosive in his absence and take that strain off Miles Sanders, or at least just keep the Patriots honest. Like, if you're going to have Sanders be your lead ball carrier, which I presume to be the case, then Ajayi can come in short yardage situations and run in a straight line. Like, that's fine. He can do that. It's going to probably take him a couple of weeks to find an actual role, so to speak, whether it's like an RB3 or someone that's in short yardage or whatever, especially given the fact that he's not taken a hit or carried a ball in about a year, or over that now, like a year and a half. So it's tricky. I understand the move. I'm concerned about the Eagles' backfield overall because Jordan Howard's injury, all of a sudden, is a little bit more concerning, isn't it? That if they have to go out and sign Jay Ajayi, that was not to replace Darren Sproles, who I think has had about as much offensive impact as Matt Collins this year. That's a Jordan Howard insurance policy. And if that's the case, the second he's on the injury report, like, oh my God, Howard's injury report, Jay Ajayi, put that there, sign the contract. Like, then I am a little bit concerned. That's not good. Not good at all. But who knows? I mean, overall, move makes sense. Good move, but bit confusing they've waited this long, especially on a bye week. Surely you'd get a bit of a hunch if there was something lingering over. But we're going to touch on that in a minute, because this is going to very swiftly move onto, I guess, a section about the Eagles medical staff and whether we trust them, whether it needs an investigation, whether it's CSI Genco. Do I still have the themes here? That's a gunshot, so we don't have that. And what makes this so tricky, what makes this so difficult to evaluate and argue about is that unlike most things in football where you can turn on the tape and make a point or an observation, we don't really know what happens with the Eagles medical staff. We don't really have a clue how things are done. And this is where things get very misty, because all we're really given is the information that Doug Peterson presents to us in press conferences. And if he does proclaim the innocence of, oh, we haven't been told by these guys yet, or we haven't had an update, or we're waiting on an update, or whatever, then that makes life tricky. Because, again, you're almost being drip-fed what other people are being drip-fed, which, if you partner that together, isn't a lot, all right? We're talking drops here of information. And you can either look at this through the lens of, well, the Eagles already reshuffled their medical staff. They did that last season. They did it at the start of this season. And the same results stand. So something's going on, all right? This can't be just a coincidence, or maybe it can. All right, this is the problem. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what's going on with the discussions between the players and the medical staff. So if we take Deshaun Jackson, for example, where he opted not to have surgery, we don't know what the recommendation was. We don't know if the doctor said, hey, we really think you should have surgery. And Deshaun went, nah, don't worry about that. I want to go Sonic the Hedgehog full speed. I'm ready to go, baby. We don't know that he did that. Right? The medical staff could have gone, hey, you don't need surgery. You know what you need to do? Bloody run fast, Deshaun. That's what you do best. And he's like, yeah, but I really need surgery. He's like, nah. Not for you. Not Deshaun Jackson. You're a mortal, mate. You don't even need surgery. Well, it could have been that. We don't know. And it's the same with Sproles. And what's really concerning is the amount of soft tissue injuries. It's the same thing every season, right? Like, we don't really know where the cluster injuries are coming from, why the mishandling is so poor. And that's what it all comes down to, is if there was transparency from, hey, this guy got injured week 1, he's going to be out 8 weeks, I don't think people would kick off in the way they do. But because you're given this, he's day to day, he's week to week, he's day to day, he's day to day, he's doing well, he's progressing. And then months later, that player's nowhere to be seen, that's where the problems lie. So, is it on the players the individual circumstances and there being maybe a sense of pride, like you don't want to let your team down, so you play through pain? Is it the bar that Doug Peterson sets of, like we saw with Sidney Jones, oh, you've got to man up, you've got to play through it. Veterans do it, Fletcher Cox does it, Malcolm Jenkins does it, why can't you? And that's what's getting guys hurt. Or is it the medical staff who are just playing, Sudoku in their spare time while there's a player with half a leg sitting on the table? It's very difficult to put a gauge or make an assumption. Like, I wouldn't want to walk into a hospital and say, right, this patient's still ill and it's this doctor's fault. Because that doctor's probably done his best. He's got no reason not to. You're being paid very good money for a qualification that is so thorough, that's so in-depth, where you understand every tiny detail. But to see this much, I would say, consistency of inconsistency, where from the entire Doug Peterson era, and I mentioned the other week, if you contrast this to what we saw under Chip Kelly, it's so different. Like last year alone, 25 players suffered an injury. That's nearly half the roster suffered an injury of some sort. And I get injuries are part of the sport. You're gladiators slamming into each other. You're bound to pick up bumps, bruises, strains, tears, everything. But surely not to that degree. Surely it's conditioning. Surely there's something. I'm no medical expert, and I don't want to sit here and point the finger at one thing and say, it's this guy's fault, it's the coach's fault, it's the player's fault, because we don't know. And it's unfair to put someone in the firing line. But there has to be some sort of investigation, because this is too much. And I mentioned Chip Kelly because in that era, that's sports science. Yes, the players hated it, but they're one of the healthiest teams in the league. They were running around having pina coladas on the field. It was fun. They just, there was no injuries to be had. And then Doug Peterson comes along, and we saw that throwback to the Andy Reid level of the 10-10-10 practices, and guys started getting banged up, and Zach Ertz got banged up. And I think he took a hit, I want to say, from Blake Countess, and had to miss a lot of preseason time. We've seen this before. And I don't want to put it on the coach, but surely there is someone that can make a decision to lighten the load here, that can just take the weight off a little bit. And if there are guys struggling, keep them on the field. And it's your discretion. You choose who's on and off the field. If you know someone has some sort of injury designation that isn't maybe 100%, don't risk them. Like the Deshaun Jackson thing, I think is on Doug Peterson. Because regardless of whether it was Deshaun's decision or not, Peterson let him walk out on the field for 4 snaps, knowing they had a bye week this week. That's unacceptable. Jackson could have said, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to do it, let's go. But that's sort of like, you crossing the road with a friend and your friend just sprinting out in front of a bus. Even if he says he's going to make it, there's a bus coming, just wait for the bus to go, alright? I don't want to get hit by a bus. It's not rocket science. And I know there are other avenues to look at this, and I don't want to be, again, putting anyone in the firing line, but something has got to be done. Darren Sproles, out for the season. We can talk all day about the 2019 free agent class, and that is another topic we're going to get to, but this medical staff, or the way things are done, we're only, a year and a half or so removed from Emmanuel Acho coming out and criticising the Eagles medical staff, Jordan Matthews saying they misdiagnosed him. And if it wasn't for the Buffalo doctors picking it up, he may have never played football again because of, one more hit and that could have done it. This isn't new. And I know the medical staff has changed. And I don't know what to suggest. If I'm in Howie's position or Jeffrey Lurie's position or Don's position, all I know is that something isn't right. It's consistently not been right for 3 years. And instead of pointing the finger, just say, what's the process here? Like, get a deeper understanding. Who is making these decisions to let these players play? Are they hurt when they're playing? If they're banged up, do something about it and keep them sidelined. And if surgery's available, I don't know. I really don't know. But for the sake of an LJ analogy, because I don't think we've actually had one in this podcast so far, which is a record. We're nearly 15 minutes in now. But everyone knows that one person that gets into relationship after relationship after relationship after getting engaged after relationship. And it never ends, right? It's like literally every 2 months, they spin a roulette wheel and they land. And whenever you ask them, what happened with this guy or that guy? It was, this guy did this or this girl did that. Or, she was crazy. She did this. She did that. He did this. He did that. At some point, it's kind of not got to be every individual case and more an overwhelming theme of, you might just be a dickhead. Yeah, and that's why they're failing. So I think that might also be the case here with the medical staff, right? It's like, I don't think you can put it anymore on, oh, well, do you know what, Jay Ajayi's injury prone, and Deshaun Jackson's older, and Darren Sproles had this, and he's had that, and Corey Clements had this, and like, stop. Alright, stop. Slow down. Last year, there were cluster injuries at cornerback and defensive tackle. This year, injuries at defensive tackle, injuries at cornerback. It's always skill position players as well. Like wide receiver, I know you always struggle, but running back has been a real position of hit for this team. Ajayi's been in the wars since his arrival in 2017. Corey Clements been in the wars. Darren Sproles has been in the wars. Wendell Smallwood's been in the wars. There was a point last preseason where Wendell Smallwood was the only healthy back on the roster, and that was even training camp. At some stage, we've got to say, look, maybe it's not the medical staff, maybe it's not the coach, maybe it's not the players, but there is something overriding this that every other team doesn't seem to have as bad. Now, sure, again, the Eagles aren't the worst team in the NFL when it comes to health and this sort of thing, but the way it's being handled, what appears to be a lack of communication or information, it's got to change. Like, just find someone you're happy with and settle down. Don't be bouncing about and then going, oh, yeah, that fell because of this, and that fell because of that, and that fell because of this. Or even job hopping's the same. But at some stage, like, just this team has to take a look in the mirror and be like, all right, what are we doing here? What are 31 other NFL teams doing that mean 20? Well, let's say 30 because the Falcons are a hot mess. But 30 other teams in the NFL doing that mean that 25 players of their 53 or 47 on a game day roster aren't injured. Like 25. That was last year. 25 at some point had picked up an injury or missed time. That is woeful. And I really don't know what happens next or how you even investigate this, because it's so difficult to, again, put into perspective. And for the millionth time, I don't want to sit here and put someone in the firing line who doesn't deserve it, but I also think it just does need to be spoken about. It's concerning. In every sense of the word, it's absolutely concerning. But before we drive ourselves into oblivion by running around in circles, we're going to take a trip down to Thank You Next Avenue. It's my favourite avenue. It's just off of Podcast Street, and you're going to be able to answer your questions. So, guys, every Friday morning, I tweet out asking for your questions. You flood my mentions on Twitter. I answer them in this section. It's called Thank You Next. If you want to ask your questions for next week's show, follow me at Liam Jenkins PSN. I'm not that scary. I know my voice is high. We deal with it. All right? We're going to start off with a double header from Isaac the Sword. Now, one of them I've already answered, I think, in today's video, but we'll see what happens. Thank you! Next to Isaac, he says, what will be your reaction if Matt Collins is on the field for this game? Probably one of severe disappointment, but, you know, it's sort of like when a parent... When you leave food unattended and your dog eats it and then gets sick and poos everywhere, you're disappointed, you're upset, but you're not surprised. You knew it was coming. There's not much you can do about it other than clean up and hope it doesn't happen again. And that's basically what we've got to with Matt Collins at this stage. What role do I think Ajayi will play? I think this Sunday is probably going to just be like a relief back in short yardage. You can't give him anything too intricate just yet. Just straight north-south stuff, like one read, like just follow your block. Nothing too overcomplicated or play action, whatever. And then let Miles Sanders do Miles Sanders things. That would be my thing for week 1. After that, as I said, third down back or short yardage, whatever it means or needs to do to kind of take that strain off, I think that's what the boys are going to work out. Thank you. Next, Geordie Fighter 141, another regular here of the show. He says, is JJ going to get snaps? Will there be a lot of defensive pressure and blitz? And is J-Mac going to be... Everyone's sending multi-headed questions today. Oh, okay, right. So is JJ Arthega-Whiteside going to get snaps? I would like to say yes. If he doesn't, it might be the single most infuriating thing I've seen this season. And we've seen a lot, ladies and gentlemen. We've seen a lot, alright? It would be bizarre if he didn't. The fact that he is literally a baby Olshon in every sense of the word. He's built the same, he's got the same strengths, he's got the same weaknesses. Looked up to Olshon. He was an absolute jump ball specialist at Stanford. And now the excuse he's not playing is, oh, well, he's cross-training numerous positions. Well, stop, because he said he's WR1. Now I need WR1. Get him at WR1. Like, just do it now. Like, if it doesn't make sense if he doesn't line up on the outside this week. So, If he doesn't, I might end up headbutting a wall. I don't know. But I really hope he's going to get snaps. It's just a case of how many. The other alternative, and dare I say this, is Jordan Matthews WR1, Nelson Aguilar in the slot, and Matt Collins WR2. But sorry, just got something in my throat a bit there. In an ideal universe, it would be Arthega-Whiteside WR1, Matthews WR2, Aguilar 3. I think we can live with that. That's serviceable. But the second you've got Matt Collins on the field, taking up 50% of snaps for no reason, I'm really not that invested into whatever Carson Walsh is trying to do at wide receiver coach. And apparently he's been a bit more rah-rah this week. Apparently he's been a bit more vocal, which is different. Why it took them 9 weeks to realise, hang on a minute, he's not done anything with these wide receivers. He's like that guy in the group project that doesn't really do anything but still gets the high mark anyway. That's Carson Walsh, and after his comments on Matt Collins, I think he had some answering to do, and the Eagles may have finally taken some action to maybe pump up this wide receiver group a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. In response to your second question, will there be a lot of defensive pressure and blitz? Yeah, because the Patriots can't really protect Tom Brady. It's something they've struggled with all season long. Their offensive line is banged up. So, yeah, I think that's good. But again, it comes down to this being the perfect scenario, though, right? Because if you think of this from Bill Belichick's perspective, you've got yourself an aging quarterback who is still playing exceptionally well, that is getting blitzed a lot, that the offensive line isn't very good, and you're playing against a defense who line up 10 yards off the ball on the outside and give you a lot of leverage. Which just means it's easy completions. It's Eli Manning version 9.0. We've seen this a million times before on the Jim Schwartz. If they're given leverage outside, if they're not going to play man and press and disrupt those route trees, that Tom Brady... Because otherwise, if there is no better quarterback in this league to throw checkdowns and know where every man is going to be and get the ball out so swiftly. Because that's how he makes a living. Like, you don't see him throw those deep dimes anymore or be that aggressive, because he doesn't have to be. Everything's underneath for him. And the Eagles give him that on a silver platter and then force feed it to him and then say, oh, please, have it for free. Like, it's really weird. So, if the Eagles are going to blitz and play off coverage, it's going to be a bad day at the office. There has to be some secondary adjustments this game. I'd like to think there's going to be a lot of pressure for Tom Brady, but that's just going to make it get the ball out even quicker, and if the Eagles don't account for that on the back end of things, then it might get a little bit messy, and that is a very valid concern. And is J-Mac going to be dominant? I hope he's going to be more dominant than 50 Shades of Grey. Thank you. Next, Kiri Lynn, PSN's ultimate hype girl. She says, thoughts on the Sproles injury and Ajayi visit today. See, I hope, Kiri, that the opening 10-15 minutes of the show have filled you in. Thoughts on the Sproles injury? I know we've touched on too dramatically, but it's sad. Again, it was kind of not expected. That's probably a horrible thing to say, but I'm not shocked by it. And it's really upsetting that the last 3 years of his career have been derailed. And every year he's come back like, oh, my kid said I want to end it on a high, so here I am. And then he does nothing and gets injured. Like, it's upsetting. He could have gone out on a high. I understand, you're an athlete, you want to come back, you want to win a ring, you want to go out on your terms and have one last rodeo. He's 5th in all-time purpose yards. I think he could have got to 4th place if he'd have stayed healthy. Wasn't the case. It's a shame. It's a real shame, and I really kind of hope that he gets a stint elsewhere in relief, like even just as a returner, because I don't want to see his career end like that. That's upsetting. But I do like the Ajayi move, even if it is gonna cause a little bit of unrest, especially in this game. Michael Douglas, who's been another regular of the show, says predictions for Sunday, final score, and Eagles top player. Predictions for Sunday is going to be an absolute slobber knocker. I think it's weird. The Eagles can win. They've got a home advantage. The Patriots' run defense isn't great. They've just got Ajayi. If Sanders can really step up and show that growth, then they've got every chance of walking out of there with a win. If not, then yeah, it's probably not going to go so well, because you're relying on tight ends and receivers against what is a very, very dominant Patriots secondary. So I'd like to think the Eagles will win a shootout. Let's say 34-27 Eagles. I'm going to go with it. I think if I'm betting, I'll take the Eagles +3. Like, I'll take the field goal. It'll be a close game. I mean, the only thing I don't like is the fact it's an angry Tom Brady. That's never a good sign for anyone. But the Eagles' top player... let's throw a wild card out there. I want to say Rodney McLeod, because I think he's genuinely been one of their top players all season outside of Brandon Brooks. Especially on defense, he's probably been the best player aside from Brandon Graham. I'd say Rodney McLeod has been the most impactful, most underrated, most under the radar. But yeah, I think he's going to have an interception. There's a pick for you. Or Jannard Avery, just for the brand. 2 more. Thank you. Next at It's Tarek. Or Tariq, I'm sorry if I've mispronounced that. I'm guessing it's Tariq, like Tariq Cohen, if it's Tarek. See, it's weird. I'm pretty sure at this point, me and my brothers both low-key have like autism of some kind, or dyslexia. Like, and I know autism's a broad scale, like I'm not just saying that. Like, I always get names mixed up and struggle to say them at times. And my brother was here in the office the other day and he was playing some like YouTube theme music and was like, oh, guess who sings this? I was like, I don't have a clue. And he went, Kevin MacLeod. And I was like, do you mean McLeod? And he was like, yeah. So I'm pretty sure both of us, like, there is something in the family gene of being a little bit dyslexic. But I don't know. I never got tested for it at school. Who knows? That's a very different point. Anyway, sorry, Tariq. He says, are Jay Ajayi and Jordan Matthews the only hope for beating the Patriots? Not the only hope. I mean, you've got a very good franchise quarterback who is good at reading defenses and playing safe football. He doesn't take a lot of... He still takes unnecessary risks, but nowhere near as much as he used to. You've got a beefy defensive line now with Timmy Jernigan back. That is going massively underrated. And outside of that, yeah, I don't know. I'd agree. Like, you want to lean on the run game, and you can't really do that without Jordan Howard. So there is going to be a little bit of pressure on Ajayi if he plays. It'll be interesting to see Matthews. Bear in mind, it's his former team as well. All right, he's been here before. Let's not forget that. So he had a little stint with them in the off-season. That could be fun. But I think the overall key to the game would be getting pressure on Tom Brady and running the ball, like, by far. And finally, Michael McCurdy says, I know the season isn't over yet, but what positions do you feel like the Eagles need improvement? Quarterback, I'm kidding. I would say wide receiver is definitely one of them. It depends on what happens in free agency, because bear in mind that Ronald Darby and Jalen Mills are both free agents, so you can have a whole secondary rebuild going on at some stage. Definitely safety, because I'm assuming one of Jenkins or McLeod isn't coming back given their current contract situation. Probably a depth defensive tackle unless Timmy Jernigan comes back. Linebacker, absolutely, but they're just going to pick up some undrafted guy out of Oregon again, and it's going to be underwhelming. So there's a lot at this point, but if you're going to prioritize, to say wide receiver, cornerback, and defensive tackle, those will be the 3, and that's the end of Thank You Next. We made it. Again, if you want to ask questions, at Liam Jenkins PSN. Alright, don't be shy. We're all friends here. And before we say goodbye, an emotional goodbye after rants and confusion, and basically a whole show about Eagles running backs and injuries and setbacks and all the rest of it, I just wanted to give you one big rally cry. Because this weekend, the Eagles play the Patriots. It's a revenge game for Tom Brady. They lost Super Bowl 52. He's still bitter about it. And the Eagles somehow go on a bye week and come back even worse off than when they went in, which takes some doing. But, and there is a but, the Patriots, as we've said, allow a lot of pressure to Tom Brady, which is good news for the Eagles in one way if all goes well. The Patriots also are bad against the run, as we established in this podcast. And the Eagles, if there was ever a time to come out and embrace the underdog mentality once again, since this team loves pushing itself into holes. It's like you've got a team of champions who don't like to be champions, so you push them into the hole so they can be underdogs and deliver their best again. Right? It's a mental state thing. They've dug themselves a hole so deep that they're now underdogs to themselves. And they're beginning to climb out of it. They had 2 nice wins against the Bears and the Bills, 2 solid defenses and woefully inefficient offenses. And now you face a defense that is the best in the NFL, arguably, and an offense that does what it says on the tin. Alright, it's the Patriots. That's all you need to know. If there's ever a time for the Eagles to come out as underdogs, to make a statement, to make an impact, to show that they won't go down without a fight and steal a win at home in front of a roaring Lincoln Financial Field, this is the week. Set that tone going into Seattle. And if you can win out from here, if you can build traction in wake of the injuries, in wake of the noise, in wake of the setbacks, it's playoff bound. There is no denying that. This has to be the game though, because deflation here leads to deflation against Seattle, and whatever wizardry Russell Wilson is cooking up, that Miami game then becomes a trap game, and that's not a situation I even want to remotely think about right now. So if the Eagles can come out swinging, give it all they've got as underdogs against themselves, backs against the wall, this is where this team is best. This is where Peterson is at his best. And now it's Carson Wentz v Tom Brady in the showdown that should have been in 2017. It was MVP versus MVP, and now we're going to see old versus new, the passing of the torch. Will Carson Wentz get it done? Will Jordan Matthews return with a bang? Only time will tell, but the time for war is now. And I know you're all ready to run through a wall, so I'll let you go and do that. Guys, from myself, Liam Jenkins, thank you for lending me your ears. It really does mean the world to me. If you could subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform is easiest for you and leave a nice rating, it would be amazing. It's the best way to help this show grow. And as always, at Liam Jenkins PSN is where you can follow me. So thank you so much. Enjoy the weekend. Go back.